Welcome back to our series on data handling for statistics. I'm Mark Ledbetter. This is Code Along and lecture video number 16. So we'll start with Code Along 16 and change it to 17 so that we don't accidentally save over top of it. Okay, so last time we talked about starting a new chunk of code, and now we want to talk about some options for this and what they mean. So I have code chunks and inline code at this address, zsmith27.github.io, r Markdown crash course. So you can see that highlighted up here. So we talked about Control-Alt-I to create a new chunk. And so the chunk of code can do almost anything. Except for the first chunk, we're going to have these three buttons in the chunk. So let's take a look at this. So the very first chunk here just has the setup to modify some chunk options. So this is interesting that you can change these. I would not change them at this point. So the second chunk now has the setup, also has run all chunks above. That means that every chunk above this will be run, but not this one. In this case, there's only one. But if you came down to the last one and you run everything above, it would run everything except this current chunk. To run the current chunk, you use the green arrow here, run current chunk. Okay? So this ran the current chunk. So let's take that back to there. All right. So those are handy. Run all chunks above is nice. And it's putting everything in the console. If you want to run it inline, then you can change this to inline, but then it does not show up. So if I run this, so if I knit to HTML, okay, and then I run this chunk, nope, it still doesn't do it. And it's okay, so changing this is not going to do that. So let's come up to Tools, Global Options, and I have changed under R Markdown, show output inline for all Markdown documents. So you probably have this checked. You probably don't have this checked. You might want to check this box here, soft wrap or Markdown files. And this is defaulted to sections and name chunks. You may want to change it to sections and all chunks. Okay. Show output preview. This should be in window, not in viewer pane, if you want it to pop up and be easy to read. Okay. So we can say OK there, and this will change it to be in the console, but I find that statement doesn't work while we're running inline. So now let's run this, and you can see that it's showing up here. Let me clear this here, and when we run this, I'm going to clear this one, and when we run it, we see it in both now. Okay, so you get it in both. But sometimes what happens is that if it's something that's large, it won't print up. It won't print in the console. It only prints in line below the chunk. Okay. So let's go back to our options, and so here's some shortcuts. We've gone over the first one to insert a new chunk. Control Enter runs the line of code your cursor is currently on. You do not have to select it. So let's find what I'm going to do is plot pressure and let's say summary cars. I'm going to put 2 lines of code in the same thing. If I run both of these, I get one with the plot, one with the console output, so the summary. So here's the plot, here's the summary. Okay. If I have my cursor anywhere on that line and I hit Control Enter, it only prints that one line of code, or runs that one line of code. And the same thing here. So by being on summary, it only ran the summary. I can, of course, more than one line of code. I can select those lines and it runs both of them. So however many, I can select multiple lines of code, and if I hit Control Enter, it runs all those lines of code at once. Okay. If it's everything in the chunk, it's pretty easy just to come over here to this run current chunk and it runs everything. Okay. All right. So you'll see that this says echo equals false, and this one does not. So what happens here is that, and when we look at our setup here, we've got the options and it says echo equals true. And this says include equals false. So what do these settings mean? Okay. So what we can say down here is let's come to the bottom. Echo equals false parameter was added to the code chunk to prevent printing of the R code that generated the plot. So in other words, the R code here will not print. Okay, so double space at the end, double space to there, and so that puts a line in between, and the code won't wrap. And we can say the option, let's see, we've got, let's see, it's one of these, include equals true, and oops, and we do this, allows the output from the chunk to print in the knit document. Okay, so include is talking about the output, and so we talked about a bold. I'm going to put one asterisk on each side of output, and you'll see that this what this is going to do is it's going to make this italics. So I've got two there, so 1, 2, and then I'll come down and say note that a single asterisk around text makes the surrounded text italics. Okay. Now, notice that this is kind of a light blue. If I add another asterisk here and here, it becomes a dark blue compared to this one. Okay. So dark blue is a bold, light blue is in italics. Okay. So the include allows is talking about the output. The echo is talking about the code. Okay, the code for echo. Include is the output. Okay, so R actually has some cheat sheets. Let's see if I can see them. Help. Yeah, so cheat sheets, and we have R Markdown and R reference cheat sheet. So R Markdown cheat sheet takes us over to a web page, and it downloads, and we'll download there, sure, and then so here's our R Markdown, and it tells cheat sheet, and it tells us important chunk options. So so it tells us what cache is, which I never use. Depends on, I never use that, but echo display the code, okay, in the output. Eval means run the code, and the default is true. But you can set it to false, and then that way you can either show the code or have the code and turn it on or off if you need. So fig align, you can have left, right, center, and if you want. Fig cap is a caption as a character string. You can have fig height, fig width. We've set this in the YAML front matter code, so we've done it for everything, so we don't have to do it by code. Include is for include the chunk in the document after knitting it, okay? And this is a handy one I use, message. So the default is true that any of the functions that send you a message, it will print out. A lot of times I will set this to false because I don't want the extra messages showing up. So results is another one. So this is, the default is markup. We could say as is. Hide, do not display the results. Hold, put all results below all, put all results below all code. So that means that instead of printing out the results where the code chunk is, it saves it all and puts it at the end. I've never used that one. Tidy is for displaying tidy code. Be careful with that because it prints it out exactly the way it is and won't wrap text. And then I've used warning, and this is the default is true, but a lot of times it will display a warning in a document, and if you don't want that warning printing out, then you can set this to false. Okay, so you might not think that there's a good time that you'd want to turn the warnings off, but you'll have to see individual topics as you go along. You might find that somebody's put warnings into their code for a package and they're just overwhelming and you don't want them. I find that's very true for messages. There's certain functions I use and they just output all kinds of stuff that I'm not interested in outputting, especially when I'm running through a loop and it does it over and over and over again, and I've got thousands of lines of this output that I don't want. And that prints out in your document when you knit it, and unless you can turn it off. So these options are very important sometimes. So pay attention to them, know what the defaults are, and this this cheat sheet is very handy. So it tells you a lot about the what R Markdown is, RMD files, about reproducible research, dynamic documents, gives you an example here. So, so I hope this cheat sheet helps you out. Now, I'm trying to give you some basics here that maybe aren't explained as well as they should be in other documents. So I'm hoping that this is very helpful to you. We need to save. Let's go back to this. Wrong one. Go back to this. And here's some options. And so this again gives you a comprehensive list. Open this in a new tab. Chunk options. So code evaluation, text output, code decoration, plots. So package options. Knitter package provides a lot of chunk options, as you can see. All right, so this talks about a lot of different things and gives you some examples. Okay, so so I think that's enough for. I think we've talked about most of these, and here's an example in here that you can take a look at. Here's another example. So you're welcome to replicate this for yourself if you'd like to see what's happening. I encourage you to change the options on some of the chunks and add new options, message equals true. You could set this to be, I think you can add message equals true as a default, and Let's see if we can run this chunk. Yep, no problem with that. So please play around with this. Make sure that you understand what's going on. See how it changes. Knit the document, HTML, PDF. If you have Microsoft Word installed, you can try Word. If you don't, then please don't, because it may cause an error. Please take care of yourself and stay safe, because we hope to see you here at the next video.